Hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today I'm going to be going through a pile of possibilities that I've got. Really quite a small pile of possibility, more of a puddle of possibilities for the fourth quarter of Historathon. Historathon is a year-long reading event. It was created by Vin from the channel Revenant Reads, and it's encouraging you to read more non-fiction history, something that's really only quite a thin slice of what I read as a reader, but I'm really intrigued about history, and so I've been very excited about this event and have tried to participate as much as I can. The event is sort of split into four quarters across the year. And so in the first quarter, you're looking at prehistory and sort of the classical world. The second quarter is sort of largely the Middle Ages. The third is, I suppose, what you might call the early modern period and sort of, the rise of enlightenment and stuff like that. And then the fourth quarter, the quarter that we're just about to go into from October through to the end of the year, will be sort of the late 19th century through to the present. So the kind of modernist, sort of modern period, I suppose. So I thought I'd go through I think, three books that I've read so far that sort of directly link up with those quarters, and then I'll go into a couple of books that might fit into this last quarter. I was inspired to do this from watching Debs from Rainer Read Stuff, and you'll see that she's got a much bigger pile than me. But yeah, so far I've just been trying to read one book per quarter, but I'm going to try and up it and potentially read two books for the last quarter. So we'll see how it goes. So the books so far this year, for quarter one, I read a book on my Kindle. Let's see if I can find it while I'm talking to you. The book was called The Classical World, and it was written by Robin Lane Fox. I'm trying to get it up, but I think my Kindle is sort of freezing on me, so I'm not going to be able to find it. But it was essentially a sort of general overview of the classical period, mainly with the focus on the Greeks and the Romans and the sort of intersection of those societies, of civilizations, as well as looking, sometimes quite briefly, really, at some of their enemies and some of their neighbours, such as the Persians, I think the Egyptians, the Carthaginians, and stuff like that. But really, it was largely focused on the Greeks and Romans, and it sort of went all over the place, whether it was into social life, into military campaigns, into these sort of small little sort of settlements, where particularly with the Greeks, they would sort of go out on their ships and find islands and new lands and make these small communities that would last for quite a long time. And also going into sort of culture and art and philosophy and sort of all kinds of areas of sort of the inheritance that we've got from the classical period. And I enjoyed it. It was a good overview, I suppose. There are just moments where I wish it had gone in a bit deeper, but then there are other books to do that, really. For the second quarter, for the medieval period, I read a book about an event that is often used as a kind of bookend for the medieval period, a kind of, I don't know, an emblem of the end of the medieval period. It was Stephen Runciman's The Fall of Constantinople, which is about the fall of Constantinople, about the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire finally sacking the city, about the siege, about the fight for it, about a bit of the sort of political situation leading up to it, as to why the rest of Europe weren't particularly able to help, some of the things that got in the way, a fair bit of infighting, and a lot of the issues going on in the Byzantine Empire as well around the same time, which complicated matters and brought things to where they were. The way that Runciman wrote about just the siege itself and the fighting was really exciting, and it's sort of one of those books that gets you really passionate about its subject. And from what I can tell, sort of, on a sort of critical basis, very rigorous, well researched, and also well written and enjoyable. So it's a great entry point, I think, for the subject. And he's written loads more on Byzantium, so it's something to I'll probably be going into again in the future. And then for quarter three, more on the early modern period, the Renaissance into the Enlightenment. I read Thomas Cahill's Heretics and Heroes: How Renaissance Artists and Reformation Priests Created Our World. So in a way, this kind of goes a little bit back into the period covered by quarter two. And on the whole, I very much enjoyed it. It's, as it says on the tin, it's really an exploration of the art and the theology of the period, both of which sort of moved in great bounds, in the sort of 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, and how both were really connected in the politics of the period. And on the whole, I quite enjoyed it. Probably maybe the weakest of the three. I don't know, it feels like a very long time since I read The Classical World, so it's hard for me to compare, but it felt a little bit like he was trying to bring the present moment a little too much into his discussion, which again is kind of fair enough, but in a way I wanted an exploration of the period that was a little more rigorous and dug a little deeper, and instead it was more focused on what this period can tell us about today and how maybe we're dealing with some of the same issues, if I'm remembering it correctly. Which again, it isn't a bad thing. It's mainly an issue of me and my expectations not quite lining up with the book that's been written, as far as I can tell. So they're the three books that I've read so far that have sort of fitted in with the quarters for Historathon. And then I've got two books that would fit in for quarter four, looking at the sort of 1850s through to the present day. The first is really more of a work of travel writing, but I think history, and particularly the history of this period, is very much going to be at the heart of the book, and it's called The Border. It's got a rather long subtitle. It's by Erica Fatland, translated from the Norwegian by Carrie Dixon. The subtitle is A Journey Around Russia through North Korea, China, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, Norway, and the Northeast Passage. On the back, I'll read the synopsis for this and the next one. So it says that from North Korea into China, through former Soviet states and breakaway republics in Asia and the Caucasus, crossing the Caspian and Black Seas, northward to Europe, into the Arctic Circle, and through the icy waters of the Northeast Passage, Erica Fatland travels alone and explores the rich, diverse, and often dramatic histories and scarred landscapes of these bordering nations. Along her 20,000 kilometre journey, she meets survivors of interminable wars and indiscriminate deportations, and some communities still nostalgic for Soviet times. The border is the log of an unmatchable journey and offers vivid portraits of the cultures and individuals living at the limits of this dominant landmass. And so it's a history of Russia, I think particularly the Soviet Union, it seems, um, told through the countries that have, bordered it and have been, to one way or another, have been sort of controlled by it, I suppose. So it sounds really, really fascinating, and I like the idea that it's taking a subject and exploring it through what's around it. I quite enjoy that kind of approach. So we'll see what that's like. I quite enjoy travel writing, particularly when there's an emphasis on history at the same time. I'm a big fan of Patrick Leigh Fermor at The Time of Gifts, and that's a kind of similar thing, I suppose. And then the next one, it definitely fits more squarely into the sort of the limits of Historathon, and it's The Balkans, 1804 to 2012, Nationalism, War, and the Great Powers by Misha Glenny. So again, it goes back a little into the last quarter, but only about by 50 years, so I'm not worrying too much. And it's a history of the Balkans, an area that I know very little about, both in terms of geography and also in terms of its history. And I'd like to know more about it. And it looks like this is sort of the definitive history on the area. So I'll read the synopsis for this as well. So yeah, apparently it says here, the landmark history of the Balkans. In this now classic work, Misha Glenny investigates the roots of the bloodshed, invasions, and nationalist fervour that have come to define our understanding of the southeastern edge of Europe. In doing so, he reveals that groups we think of as implacable enemies have, over the centuries, formed unlikely alliances, thereby disputing the idea that conflict in the Balkans is the inlocutable product of ancient grudges. And he exposes the often catastrophic relationship between the Balkans and the rest of Europe, raising profound questions about Western intervention. Updated to cover the last decade's brutal conflicts in Kosovo and Macedonia, the surge of organised crime in the region, the rise of Turkey, and the rocky road to EU membership, the Balkans remains the essential and peerless study of Europe's most complex and least understood region. So yeah, just sort of reading that makes me excited and keen to get into it. And as I said, I know very little about this, and I would love to. So we'll see how it goes. It's a bit of a tome. Well, both of these are both tomes. This is just under 800 pages. The book on Russia, the border, I think is a similar length, maybe a little bit shorter. Let's see if they're even. Oh, it's actually, yeah, it's just under 600 pages. So it's just the way it's bound makes it feel much bigger than it is. So that shouldn't be too bad at all. But there we go. So there are two books, a small pile of possibilities. It's only that big for what I'd like to read for this last quarter of Historathon. Let me know if you're planning on joining in, and if there's anything from this period that you find intriguing and you're thinking of exploring. But yeah, for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.